Now, uncertainty now surrounds the national athletics trial scheduled to begin on Thursday at the National Stadium in Abuja. This follows the inability of the sport to constitute a board. Nigerian athletes converge on the National Stadium in Abuja for the trials ahead of the World Athletics Championships. There are concerns the postponement of elections into the board of the AFN will affect the competition. Nigerian track queen Blessing Okagbare will not be part of the trials, having already secured her qualification for the World Championships. The World Athletics Championship comes up next month at the Olympic Stadium in London. Now, in Africa, the last edition of the World Athletics Junior Championships races to a start in Nairobi, Kenya today without Nigeria. This follows the failure of Nigeria to attend the African Athletics Junior Championship held last month in Algeria. This might not be unconnected to the absence of a board of the Athletics Federation of Nigeria, AFN. Rerun elections to ushering a new board of the AFN earlier scheduled to hold today has been moved to next week. Joining us live from our Abuja studio is the Chief Operating Officer, or the Chief Executive Officer, I beg your pardon, of the Making of Champions, Bambo Akone, the man who has established the Tokyo 2020 Olympic project for Nigeria. Glad to have you join us, Bambo. Nigeria was not at the African Juniors. Now it's the World Juniors. These are not happy times for athletics in Nigeria, are they?
I think it's very devastating times for Nigerian junior and youth athletes. As you mentioned, we just missed the African Junior Championships in Algeria 2 weeks ago. A disaster considering Nigeria won 27 medals at the last African Juniors 2 years ago. And we are set to miss the our second consecutive World Youth Championships, which is kicking off in Kenya this morning.
Well, apart from the World Championships we are missing, tomorrow, just yesterday you were all full of expectations about the national trials. But then today we are getting conflicting reports about whether it's going to hold or not. Will the national trials for the World Championships in London hold this week in Abuja?
Well, that's very interesting. You know, at Making of Champions, we have about 11 athletes qualified for the national trials in Abuja. We're all here in Abuja already. So the reports are very worrying. You know, a lot of athletes and people have traveled from all over Nigeria, spent a lot of money. With these national trials, no one is being accommodated by the federation. So it would definitely be a disaster if these rumors turn out to be true, that the national trials will not hold after all when the athletes are already here in Abuja ready to compete.
Okagbare will be absent. Her absence and some of the top athletes that have already, like Tobi Amuson and the rest of, and Brume, their absence, will it not affect the level of competition at these trials?
Well, you know, it's been a very tough year for Nigerian athletics. As you know, there's been the election which was held and annulled and has been postponed. It's not been rerun yet. And that is what has caused the void in the Athletics Federation, no funding to go for any international competitions. And now the national trials also seems to be in jeopardy. But, you know, I think about 11 athletes have already qualified to represent Nigeria at the World Championships in London. I would expect that the federation probably cannot even afford to bring them to Nigeria for the trials. So I would expect them to still hopefully be able to represent Nigeria at the World Championships, even though they don't come to these trials. I think these trials are a good final opportunity for athletes based mostly in Nigeria to show what they've got in a year that has been a disaster. There's barely been 2 or 3 competitions. Making of Champions ourselves, we had to step in to sponsor the national junior and youth trials about a month ago. And unfortunately, we've seen that since then, the Federation in Nigeria was not able to take these athletes that qualified and won medals at the trials to the African Juniors or the World Youth Championships. I understand that there is also the Commonwealth Youth Games in the Bahamas coming up next week. And my understanding is that the ministry is behind that and is taking a few sports including athletics, to the Bahamas. And I think it's unfortunate that we can't show face in Africa, in Algeria. We can't show face in Kenya for the last ever World Youth Championships. But we're going to the Bahamas, which is going to cost 2-3 times as much for each person they are sending.
Well, if these national trials will go on at all, I hear that some of the people jostling for a position on the board are going to finance it. But isn't this what this politics in sports it's all about, to get government out of it and get private people to fund sports?
Well, I mean, I think for this year, it's much too late to be talking about bringing private sponsors and corporates into this. Right now, athletics in Nigeria is a big administrative mess. Those of us who are very close to the sport, like ourselves at Making of Champions, were able to step in at short notice to sponsor the national junior and youth trials. But you can't go to corporates a day before the national trials and ask them to sponsor. It just doesn't work like that. You know, those who are jostling for power at the federation, I would encourage them to step forward and make sure that these trials happen. However difficult that may be, because we don't know who the leadership is going to be, I think there's a reluctance from all parties to really put down the funds when they are not sure that they are going to be the next president or the next board. But really, it's a disaster, and it's unheard of for the national trials not to happen. And it would be an embarrassment to call up 400 athletes from all over Nigeria, tell them to pay their way to Abuja, allow them to get here, and then tell them that it's not going to hold. So I fully expect that it will hold. I'm sure something will happen in the next day that will make sure that it does hold as planned.
Before I let you go, Bambo, the project 2020 Olympic Games, you are trying to raise Nigerian athletes through the Making of Champions to win medals in Tokyo. This whole development, 3 years away from Tokyo, how does it affect your plans? How is it going? Isn't it a setback already?
Yeah, so I do want to clarify that I know you introduced us as the 2020 Olympic project for Nigeria, but obviously we're not an official Nigeria project. It's a private venture, a private organization. And we took it upon ourselves to start training and building Nigeria's athletes for the next Olympics. We've been here for about 3 years already. Started a track club last year. We have about 14 athletes. And some of these athletes, you know, are already the best juniors in Nigeria. Making of Champions athletes won 7 medals at the National Junior and Youth Trials last month. And 3 of them should have been in Algeria. And if you go by the times that happened in Algeria, we should even have a double African junior champion right now in the 100 and 200 meters. So despite the inability of Nigeria to send these kids out to win medals for the nation, I would say we're on track for 2020. You know, we also have a student athlete scholarship. To date, we've had 3 athletes already that have gotten sponsors to pay for their education in Nigeria while we are training them for 2020. And there are more sponsorships and more scholarships coming on board as we speak. So we have a very exciting project. Our goal is to have up to 100 athletes in our scholarship by 2020, and we just need the support of corporate Nigeria. You know, these long-term projects are what you can expect corporate Nigeria to really come on board and support, and that's what we are seeing.
Well, Bambo, well, at this point, I'll say a big thank you to you. That was Bambo Akoni of the Making of Champions from our Abuja studio. That's all of sports at this time. We just hope that the athletics trials will go on from tomorrow.